So for tonight's session, Zev is going to be telling me what to write, and I'm going to do my best to write it, which works out because I'm exhausted and I don't think I can do much more than just be a set of hands.
Yeah, so this is maybe a little more old school and a little more in the weeds than we tend to get. We're often sort of talking about like architecture or sort of how you piece some things together, and this one is really more about getting into the nitty gritty of writing some code to do some stuff, and it is the basics, the very basics of how to make a drawing app. So this is like finger painting, like you touch your finger on the screen and it makes a line. If we have time, maybe we can add an eraser or clear the whole drawing button. This is something that I've used in some side projects, and I've never really done anything like, I wouldn't know how to make like a Pixelmator or something. They do wild stuff in those apps, but this is like the foundations of something like that. Just really simple drawing. It's not the kind of stuff that a lot of people will typically have done, especially if you started this kind of development recently. It used to be a lot more prominent before, like asset catalogs and PDF assets and a bunch of other more modern graphic stuff, and just sort of like the simpler look of iOS these days. Back in the days of fine Corinthian leather, you would do these sort of drawing tasks a lot more. So it's definitely a little less common, but still I think pretty interesting and worth learning some of the basics of how it works. So um, I'm thinking it's gonna be real basic. It's gonna be just a blank white screen, and then we will click and drag single finger, not worrying about multi-touch. And as you drag, you'll get a line drawn behind your finger. And if we had time, we could add eraser, add a color picker. Some of those things are pretty easy to add. I'd be tempted to do this in SwiftUI because it would make that user interface stuff really easy. But since I haven't practiced this before in SwiftUI, I think it would be a little hard to hook up the core graphics drawing stuff to SwiftUI. Core graphics really likes to live in a UIKit world. Certainly, if you playing along at home would like to try that, feel free to send us a link if you get it working. I'd be interested to see what that looks like. But I think we'll go ahead and do this one at UIKit.
And maybe next year we can do SwiftUI.
Next year in Jerusalem. Okay, so let's go ahead and do regular app.
Cool.
And click next, and let's call it finger painting or something like that. And so yeah, storyboard, that looks fine. Tests are also something that might be interesting to get into. This is actually a really good case to use snapshot testing. So might as well include the tests. I don't know if we'll get to actually using them because it can be fiddly to set up like the point-free snapshot test case stuff. But if we do, it's actually pretty nice for this kind of work. So let's go ahead and create the app.
Cool. Hi, Megan. Welcome to chat. I'm also very excited to learn about this because I don't know anything that we're about to learn tonight. I will create a Git repository. Also, real quick promo for our YouTube channel, ! Links in chat. We have all of our meetups that we have done live streamed there, except for the last two. I have edited both of them. I've uploaded both of them, but I've not done all the Git stuff. So either tomorrow or Saturday, I will have both of those, the previous two meetups posted, and then this one will be shortly behind.
Okay, so let's see. Let's run the app. I just want to get the simulator warmed up. I'm trying to think like that right away as I start thinking about and looking at some sample code I've got in terms of how we're going to build this. There's a whole bunch of simplifications I'm probably going to make to just keep things short and sweet. Things like if you want to worry about rotation, there's a whole bunch of annoying complexities like device rotation. So I think we're going to make some assumptions there. But what we're basically going to be doing is there's a layer of iOS, like the sort of technology stack called core graphics. and it deals with drawing bitmap images on the CPU. As far as I know, none of this is GPU accelerated. And the idea is generally you would draw something in core graphics as a bitmap image and then send it off to a layer or view or something, and then that's going to be moved around the screen on the GPU. So the like actually rendering it on the screen and all the moving and compositing, that's like hardware accelerated, but we're just going to be doing real simple drawing pixels, nothing too fancy. And the way we're going to do that, there's a few different ways that you can use the core graphics kind of core set of APIs to draw pixels. But they all center around using something called a graphics context. And a context is one of those weird sort of abstract things that, like, until you kind of grasp how it's used, it's like it's hard to explain. It's like this.
Would you say it's similar to like a core data context where it's like sort of here's your gateway to everything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the graphics context in our case will actually manage the memory that we're drawing into, and it also manages like, hey, what color is my paintbrush, and am I rotated at all, and am I like drawing into a layer group, what's my blend mode. It describes the world that you're drawing in, and it's this weird kind of paradigm where you often, instead of saying I'm going to paint with a red paintbrush, you say the world is a red paintbrush and now I'm going to paint. So the thinking is a little backwards, but I think we can get through it.
Right on.
So let's see. So let's go into our view controller.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually going to want to do some touch handling. So we're going to want to be in a view subclass. So what we should do is make a view called drawing view, like a custom view subclass, and set it as the view of this view controller. Maybe let's do it in a new file, because I think it's going to get a little big and I'd like to keep them separate.
Sure. What would you like the file to be called?
Let's call it drawing view or painting view, whatever. Are we calling this drawing or painting? In my app, I call it doodle view, but I was being cute.
We'll call it painting.
Okay. So we've got, let's make a painting view, which is a UI view subclass. And again, we're doing this so that we can get access to the touch handling stuff, which I don't believe you can do easily at a controller level. And there's ways to do most of this stuff with gesture recognizers, but we're going to keep it real simple and just use the old school touch handling code, which is also something people may not be familiar with, so that should be fun. Okay, so we have our view, and right now it does nothing. And let's set it as the class of our view controller view, which we should be able to do in the storyboard, I think. Like, I would not normally do this, but I think it's actually a really easy way to set it up for this demo. Painting view, I think?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Great. All right. And then let's do a really simple example just to kind of give an idea of where we're headed. So let's go into painting view. And in the code. Yep. And we're just going to write a real quick demo method that we'll actually delete eventually, but I just want to kind of set the stage for what we're doing.
Sure.
So I want you to override a standard method called draw. Used to be called draw rect, but then they took the parameter name away because Swift. And so this method is how, like, if you have a view that is doing some custom drawing, like a label or an image where it has some inherent visual stuff inside it, this is how it's happening under the hood, is it's drawing in a method like this. And what we do is we go and get the current graphics context using a method called UI graphics get current context. I forget if they changed the name in Swift, whatever. So yeah, like context equals UI graphics get. Maybe it's UI graphics dot current context. It has actually been long enough since I did this that I think some of the names have changed.
Context?
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's optional, so I think we need to guard it.
Yep.
Yep, returns an optional. Else return. And so this is another one of those weird things, like what, a global function? Yeah, when you're in DrawRect, you go and get the current context, and this is the graphics context that UIKit is currently using to draw stuff. And now we can draw stuff in it, and this will end up inside the layer. So let's just draw like, a red rectangle or circle or something. So the way we can do that is first we have to set a color on the context. So we can do like context dot set fill color. Sure. Just let's do like 1001, and then so we haven't drawn anything. We've just said anything we draw in the future will have a red fill. So now we need to draw something. So let's just draw like context dot fill rect. There's a different one with a single rect.
I think it had the same signature though.
I think you're right, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's give it a CG rect that's just like something. Let's not do the full frame of the view. Let's just do something smaller so that we can see where it's drawing. Great. Let's try that. Let's see what it looks like. Hey, look at that. And so yeah, so like set fill color fill. This is part of this toolbox we'll have of primitive drawing operations. You can draw lines, you can draw rectangles, ellipses, polygons. You can do blend modes. You can do rotation and scale kind of stuff. And these are the basic building blocks we're going to use to do our drawing. So our job is going to be to hook up some of those drawing functions to the point where we're touching on the screen.
Real quick, and this might be
Sure.
A tangent, but if in iOS you see a lot of rounded corners on things. If I wanted to round these corners, would I do it on the context or would I do it on the view?
So there's actually a method to fill a round rect.
Ah.
But so there's two things you could do. One is let's do context.fill. Type context.round. I think there's something in there about a round rect. Try corner. I might be wrong. It looks like I might be wrong. So the other way, which it turns out is the only way, is you can create an arbitrary Bezier path and then fill that path. So we can do this in 2 lines. You can say let path equals. I forget if we can do it with a CG path. So let's just do it. Yeah, UI Bezier path, and then you can initialize it rounded rect by rounding corners, or rounding rect corner radius. Yeah, so let's just pick another rect that's not going to overlap with the first one, or somewhat not overlapping. No worries, the 2 notes. Glad to have you here. So this is saying which corners. Yeah, so let's do all corners, and then the radius is, oh yeah, they give you a CG size because it's a different corner radius on the X and Y. So you just do a CG size with some width and some height, which you probably want to be the same.
What would that be?
Let's do 5 or 10 or something.
Would that be
corner radius? Oh, and then so we've made the path, but now we need to fill it in the context. So we'll do context.fill path.cg path. Fill path. Oh, yeah. So this is another weird context thing. You don't say fill this path, please. You say you set the path on the context, and then you fill path. So context.set path, I think, or okay, is it just path equals? I can't remember. Probably needs to be path.cg path. See if it lets you compile that. Yeah.
This is a very Objective C thing, huh?
Oh yeah, actually it's C.
Ooh.
What's the begin path, close path. How do you, I don't remember. Add path. Yeah, so all of this is for some reason a C API. And then this is the overlay as it's being translated into Swift.
64 was enough, but there it is.
And if you changed your fill color in between, before you call fill, then you would get a different fill, or you could add a stroke color. You can start playing with this. Like, these are all the basic operations that you also see in a lot of graphics apps.
Neat.
Sweet. If you're colorblind, it looks different, I promise.
Didn't think of that.
Yeah. So we're actually not going to be using Rect in our final app. It's a nice little place to be able to play, but if we leave that there for just a second, or leave it commented out. The reason we're not going to be using Rect is the way Rect works is that at some point, your view's drawing context will be marked as dirty. Something that you do or something the system does will say, aha, the last thing that we drew here is no longer current. We need to go and redraw. And there are different things that can mark it as dirty. You can call set needs display, and that will mark it as dirty. You can make it so that anytime the view resizes, it will automatically get marked as dirty. And then the system will call drawRect. And that rect parameter is for, like, if you know that something the user did only dirtied this part of the view, you can say only dirty that part of the view, and then you only have to redraw that part, and it's less expensive that way. But you don't get the previous contents of the view. Like, it's hard to explain. It'll leave what was there, but if you're like drawing a line, you don't get what was under that. So you can invalidate this rect here and completely redraw it from scratch. But if I've got a painting and then I draw a new line, I would need to know what was behind that line to draw the line. I'd have to draw in what was behind first and then draw the line over it.
So and that, is it right to think that it's flat as opposed to layered?
Yes, you do all these operations and it feels like you're doing layered operations, and they are like drawn from back to front. We saw that with the red and green rectangle. But once they're drawn, they're just pixels. It's just a flat bucket of pixels. And yeah, you don't really get access to the underlying drawing instructions. So it's pretty awkward. Like, you can do it, but what you basically have to do is every time you're about to draw, you have to render off an image of the existing view, then draw that image into the bitmap. Like, in this code here, you can fill rects, you can fill paths, you can also just grab like a UI image and draw it in there. You'd have to get your image, draw it in, and then draw your thing over that image. So you have to completely redraw the entire view anytime you wanted to add something. And it turns out, as fast as our devices are, this is actually pretty slow. There's really not that much you can do to speed up these operations, because it's like, I could be doing anything at every single one of these pixels. It's not like a GPU shader where you can define some function that says, for any pixel, I can instantly calculate what goes here and I can do them all in parallel. It basically is a giant array of pixels, and you're just having to kind of go through them one by one. So not great. Turns out there's a super cool trick that you can do that makes it super fast. I don't remember how I learned this trick. It's like weirdly poorly documented, or like you can kind of cobble it together from looking at 3 different places in the documentation, but there's nowhere that just says, here's how you do this. The trick is this: you make your own graphics context, which is just this object that manages a chunk of memory and like the fill color and stuff. So you make that object and you own it. You set that object as the contents of a CA layer. Could you please pull up the docs for CA layer?
Oh boy.
So we're going to, sure, you can do that. Option click, open in developer documentation, or you could go window, developer documentation, or you could do Command-Shift-0, or you could Google it. So here's CA layer. Layers, just quick review. This is like one level of abstraction below views, closer to the GPU. So view, you got all this fun like auto layout and user interaction stuff. Layers don't have a lot of that magic. They're more like, hey, I'm a rectangle and I have some contents, and I can be moved around the screen. But if you want any magic, you have to do that yourself. One of the weird kind of Objective-C warts on layers is the contents property. Like layers have a bunch of modernish stuff. You can do shadows and corner radius stuff. You can do some pretty advanced like graphics filters and things. But if you go and find the contents property, you'll find that it has this pretty gross type of any optional. So like, what can I put in this layer? Anything? You know, could it be a string? Could it be a core data model? Well, no. It can be a certain list of things, and that list is not documented, or at least not well documented.
Let's go.
But go ahead and have a look at the contents property and look at the docs for it. So an object that provides the contents of the layer, we can ignore that static image thing, that doesn't apply here. If the layer object is tied to a view object, you should avoid setting the contents of this property directly. The interplay between views and layers usually results in the view replacing the contents of this property during the subsequent update. This is important to us because every view in iOS has a layer behind it. Like basically the view is a layer kind of under the hood. On the Mac, it's a little more complicated, but on iOS, just every view is a layer with some nice frosting on top. And what it's saying here is don't set the contents on a layer if that layer is a views layer, because just don't. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to make our own layer and just set it as a sub layer of the views layer. So we'll just have our own layer that the view isn't going to touch. We can do whatever we want with. And we're going to make a graphics context. We're going to draw in that context and set the context itself as the contents of the layer. It turns out you can set a few different types as the contents. You can set images, I think animated images. I believe you can set colors. I might be wrong on that. And there's a few other things you can set as the contents of a layer. But what we're going to set is a bitmap context. And it's like, this is weird, but it turns out this is a way that you can get super fast drawing performance, because as you draw into the bitmap context and then set it to the layer, that context is rendered to the screen without having to do any extra copies of the data, as far as I understand.
And I believe you want to do all drawing code there. So like if we were just doing a UI Bezier path for, having some sweet drawing or like a render of an image that you wanted to make yourself, you would still do that on the layer. You wouldn't just put that on the view.
It depends. If you have a view and like, let's take an old school example, back when buttons were textured and actually looked like buttons. If you were doing some sweet like gradient rounded corner glossy thing, and you knew that for a given size of the button, it was only ever going to have one appearance, it's not like it's going to get updated, you can throw that in Rect in a view. And like, especially on the Mac, where you don't even have things like a background color property on views, it's really common to just put your drawing code in Rect. And that's fine. That's how it's done. So hang on just a second. Are you good for? Baby is doing baby things, as often happens. We'll see if she settles down. So it was actually pretty common to override Rect and just do this drawing on the Mac. If you watch, if you go and find Lauren Brichter's talk to the Stanford iOS course, like the year it came out or the next year or something, he talks about like, I found this amazing trick to do fast like table scrolling in iOS, and the trick is one view per cell, do your own drawing, by which he means override Rect and just draw everything yourself so that you're not having to composite on the GPU. It turns out compositing now is plenty fast to do that. It just wasn't at the time. So he was using that trick of rendering everything once at the one time it needs to be rendered, and then just you've got basically an image of your cell.
How do you spell this person's name?
Lauren Brichter, Loren Brichter. He worked on UIKit at Apple, and then he left and made Tweety, one of the first Twitter clients that was eventually bought and turned into the official Twitter client. And then he left Tweety. It's his talk from CS193P. I don't know if it's that. It's the iPhone Stanford course. I don't know if you can find it, but like, I mean, he's generally pretty cool. Then he made Letterpress and yeah, neat stuff.
Somehow me pulling up Twitter unmuted the stream preview, so sorry everyone for hearing Zev twice for a bit.
Weird.
All right, yeah, I don't want to spend too much.
Yeah, it's a sidetrack.
Yeah, so I'll just put the name in chat for anyone that wants it. It's also up there on the screen. So if you're watching this on YouTube later, you can go find the Stanford talk that Zev is referring to.
Okay, so we have a little bit of setup to do, and then we'll actually get into some real drawing. So inside our view, we want to create a layer that's going to be our drawing layer. So just like a private property that is like private let drawing layer equals CA layer. Oh yeah, Joe in the chat reminds us that he created pull to refresh in Tweety. There was like a refresh button, and then he wanted to put like an account switch button in the corner. So he's like, well, where do I put the refresh button? Well, I'll just put it at the top. And once it was at the top of the scroll, he was like, well, I'll just make it refresh when you scroll, and pull to refresh was born. Yeah, it's a good story. Okay, so we have our drawing layer, and we need to add it to our views layer, like when we init the view. Let's see how I did this in my app that I built. I did it in init. It's a little weird because we're using storyboards, so this will probably be in init with coder. Or, you know, if we were building a real piece of code, we would like do some you know, common init type deal. I guess we'll need, so you need to override init with frame and init with coder.
Yeah, just you never get the coder one until you've made the other one.
I mean, if you want to do a common init, it actually wouldn't be that hard. So yeah, call super, and then just have like a function called common init. You make it a like a private func init, common init.
Oh, okay.
It's not actually an init. It's just a function that you're going to call from both places. You need func in there.
Super tired.
And then, yep, call super and call common init from the init with coder. And yeah, exactly. And we'll set up the frame and stuff in a second. And you need it online. You did, and then you cut it maybe instead of copying. Yeah. Okay, so that is just some setup shenanigans. Now we need to probably make some compromises because we're doing sort of a quick and dirty version of this. And the compromise is this: we're going to make a CG bitmap context, which is the thing we're going to be drawing into. And a bitmap context manages some memory that represents like a chunk of pixels, and it needs to know how big it is, and you can't resize them. So we're going to have to make one, like the way I did it in the app I'm kind of cribbing code from was that like every time the view resized, it would resize the context, and I don't think we want to deal with that right now. It's like stuff that we just don't want to deal with. So what I propose is we take the humongous shortcut of making the bitmap context the size of the screen, and then we just don't have to deal with it. So let's just do that. Okay. So let's do a private let context. And I think, let me double check how I made this. I forget if we will need like make any intermediate values. Let me check real quick. Like, do we need to do a self-calling closure or anything? CG context. Okay, we might need to do some gross stuff. So let's do one of those like closures that like, so context colon CG bitmap context. Yeah, exactly.
CG bitmap context.
Yep.
Do I need to import core graphics?
Oh, probably. Oh, sorry, it's just CG context. The imports from Objective-C. Like, I'm going back far enough that I'm crossing the streams on the Objective-C way to do some of this. So yes, it is just a CG context, and then they made a bunch of initializers in Swift for like different types of, like there's a PDF context for drawing PDF graphics, and like different types of context. So yeah, so it's going to be a CG context initted with, and we're going to do the third one. So let's just look at those parameters for a second. We're not using the one with a release callback and release info because that's like a super gross C way of doing it. We're doing this first one. Oh, not first, the one you have highlighted. So can you wrap those to all separate lines, because we might want to add like comments for what they are. Oh, fancy. Also, there's a plugin called, I don't remember what it's called. Code something. There's an Xcode plugin that will wrap parameters to one line.
That's fine.
Text Plus. It's called Text Plus, and it's free in the App Store. Okay. And can you pull up the docs for this initializer, either in the little sidebar?
I tried and it wouldn't.
Yeah. Sometimes it's unhappy until you fill them in. I think it's that first one. All right, so check out the docs for the data parameter. Pointer to the destination in memory where the drawing is to be rendered. The size of this memory block should be at least bytes per row times height, number of bytes. But cool trick, pass null if you want this function to allocate memory for the bitmap. This frees you from managing your own memory. Yay, let's do that one. So translating in our head from C to Swift, they say pass null, I say pass nil. Oh, sounds like we're getting company.
Oh, he does the thing. And I'll get you a bottle.
This is Sam. Sam is going to learn about graphics context. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so exactly. So we're going to do, now we need to be a little careful with our width parameters. So if you could keep, oh, you have the docs up. So the width and height, notice that they say in pixels. So it's uiscreen.main.bounds.width, but that's in points, UIKit points. And to get the width in pixels, we're going to need to multiply by the uiscreen.main.scale. And again, in a real app, you'd probably want to use the current trade environment or something like that, and then wrap the whole thing in an int. Yep. Same thing for height, just replace width with height. This stuff is like a little fiddly, definitely. And then what's the next parameter? Bits per component. At least this is better than in C, where like these parameters aren't labeled. Bits per component. Yeah, so I did this as 8. I just hard coded it to 8. And this is because your typical like RGB color is 3 bytes or 4 if you have an alpha channel. So 8 bits of red, 8 bits of green, 8 bits of blue, 8 times 8 times 8, 8 to the third, or 2 to the, where am I? Is that 16th, right?
It's been
2 to the 24th.
I've done binary.
It's 2 to, sorry, no, it's all coming back. It's 2 to the 24th, which is 16,777,216 shades of color. And that was basically the standard until we got, you know, wide color and floating point color and all that stuff. So we're just going to keep it simple with 8 bits per component. And then bytes per row. So bytes per row is the width in pixels times the bytes per pixel. So you might want to pull out width in pixels as a let. you'll want the stuff, you want the int as well.
Okay, well, I'm doing that. There's a question in chat. Why are we adding our own layer instead of using the one that comes with it?
Oh yeah. So if you go and look in the docs for, can I give her to you?
My arms will fall off.
Okay. Can you hear me okay if I'm back here? Let me pull the mic back. Oh, I can't.
Yeah, we can still hear you fine.
Okay. If you go and look at the documentation for the contents property of a CA layer, it says don't fiddle with the contents of the layer if the layer is owned by a view. Basically, the view is going to be doing stuff with the contents of the layer. She's not drinking. You may have her back now. So that's why we're making our own layer. Sure. And not using the layer in the view. Hope that answers your question. And it, like, I've done this without doing the extra layer and it works, but then I found the docs and was like, I will do it the quote unquote right way next time. Right, so yes, we have 8 bits per component, and then bytes per row is width in pixels times bytes per row. Yeah, that looks good. Or times bits per component, sorry. And then a color space, we need to say what color space. Now, we made an assumption that we're using RGB, RGB color, because we said 8 bits per component and we want to use color. So it's going to be CG color space create device RGB. It's a good old C style function, no dots. CG color space create device RGB. And then the bitmap info. This one took me a little fiddling to figure out which value was correct. So the value that we want is CG image alpha info. Like, it's just a uint32, and you're like, what am I supposed to pass there? And we can look in the docs here, and it's like kind of helpful, but like you can pass stuff from CG alpha info or CG bitmap info. We want CG image alpha info dot none skip last dot raw value. And very briefly, if you think about, like, you've got a big row of data, like a big array of bytes, and this is supposed to represent pixels. So you've got to decide what order, is it red, green, blue, alpha? Is it blue, green, red, alpha? Is it alpha, red, green, blue? And so there's a bunch of constants that define how the bits are to be interpreted. And this matters because, like, in their typical PNG, it's like RGBA, but on the GPU, for whatever reason, it's BGRA, I think, or BRGA. I think they're reversed, or ABGR. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of different ones. And like when you put a ping in an asset catalog, part of the asset catalog compilation process is to reorder those bytes to be the same order as the GPU, so that doesn't have to happen at runtime. So you just get that little bit of speed boost. So, like, this stuff is kind of important and kind of esoteric, but if you get it wrong, you'll either get no image. Like, if we got any of these parameters wrong, you probably just get no image, but you might also get like an image with weird colors because the channels are flipped around. So it's important to get the stuff right. And I believe we have. There's some scaling stuff that I think we're going to have to do, but let's hold off until we try drawing and see how wrong it is. And then, yes, you force unwrap it, and that's fine. Okay, so we got that, and now let's do. We added the sublayer. Let's just add something to make sure that the layer gets positioned correctly. So let's do, like, in layout subviews.
In the view controller
of the view.
Yep.
So anytime the view gets resized, let's call super. And then let's just set the drawing layer frame equals view.bounds to keep it simple. We might even, we'll see if, I forget how the sample project is set up. I forget if, are we gonna have a little bit of stretching because of the status bar? We'll figure it out. It's not a huge deal. So we'll see if it's stretched or not. Okay, so we have a layer. And now let's try drawing some stuff in it. Just to see if it's working. Let's like make sure it's all hooked up right. So let's see, how do we want to do that? Let's just put some code in like did move to window or something. We're gonna throw this away, but just to see if it's all set up. So yeah, let's just say like context. Let's set the fill color to something. Red or black or whatever. Red is nice. No, black is like the default sometimes. So to see if it's actually working, setting it to something, you know, some real color is nice. You going for a particular color?
Nope.
Neat. There's also a version that takes a UI color, which is nice because you can use color literals.
I want to see what happens.
Okay, so we set the fill color, and then let's add an ellipse, say. And it gives you a bounding rect, and it will draw an ellipse in that rect. And then the last step is you have to set the context as the contents of the layer. And I forget where the docs say this. I was trying to find it. But there's something that's like, if you want to do this and have the performance be good, what you need to do is set the layer's contents as the context, and then don't do anything else until the layer has rendered, so that it doesn't like mark that memory as dirty. Cool, it's not working. I think I know why. And I think it has to do with some really annoying like context, what am I trying to say? Coordinate system flipping stuff. I can't fully articulate why you have to do this. It probably has something to do with the fact that on the Mac, the coordinate system is flipped, and I think we're sort of picking up some echoes of that. But what we're going to need to do is when we create the context, so let's on line 15, let's change that return to a let context equals. Oh, that's a good idea. But you're, oh, well, depending on where the layer ended up, the problem is when you're drawing in a bitmap, if you draw in the wrong place, like if you draw outside the view, you just get nothing. There's no there. There's no pixels there. Like the pixels are actually here. And if you draw over here, tough noogies, there's nothing to draw there, so nothing gets drawn into the context. So I think we have to do a little bit of transformation. Unfortunately, I have some code here that actually works, so we can refer to that. So let's change line 15 to a let like context equals like inside, because then we're going to do some stuff, and then so it looks like what we need to do is we are going to scale and flip the context. We need to scale it by the screen scale. Oh yeah, so this part I can explain. The context doesn't know anything about UIKit points and how, like, you know, one point is 2 pixels on a 2x retina screen, that kind of stuff. It's just a bag of pixels. So if we want it to think that it is, you know, whatever, we're running on an iPod Touch 7th generation because Apple really likes defaulting to that now in Xcode for some reason. So that's 320 points wide. If we want it to understand that this 640 pixel wide thing is 320 points, we're going to have to scale it by the scale. So that's the easy part. We also are going to need to flip it vertically. I cannot explain why, other than that through experimentation, I determined that the reason we're not seeing anything is it's like flipped up off the top. Like we want it here and it's flipped up here. So the scale by, first we're actually going to translate and then scale, because it's flipped off the top. And if we flip it, something about the point about which it rotates means that we have to scale it and then flip it back. So we're going to translate by 0 on the X. And let's see, you pulled out the width in pixels. let's pull out the height in pixels as well.
Sure.
Well, she's not drinking it, but you know, it's something to chew on. And yes, that is going to be height in pixels, and then we're going to scale the context. Does it have to be a CD float? I guess it does. Okay. The X is going to be the UI screen main screen scale, so you can pull that out too if you want, or just whatever. Either way. And yeah, all the like main screen stuff, if you're doing this in a real app, you'd want to pull that off the trait collection because it can change. And on the Y is the negative scale. And that's the thing that, like, we're just combining two operations into one. We're scaling it by the scale, and we're also taking that opportunity to flip it vertically. Okay, let's give that a try. If that doesn't work, the evening will very quickly devolve into debugging hell. Hey,
Sweet.
cool. So one thing we can do to try to debug this is just put your rectangle in different places. Try it with positive, negative, like change the X or Y to negative.
You did say to have this be 8, right?
Bytes per row in my sample code is width in pixels times bytes per pixel.
Times bytes per pixel.
Bytes per component. Bytes. Okay. Oh, hang on a second. Yep, this could be part of the problem. So, right, yeah, this makes sense. So bytes per row, we have our width in pixels, which is 640, times bits per component. I made some named variables in my code, which helps with this. We have another number that we need to put in here, which is the bytes per pixel. If we're doing RGBA, then you need 4 bytes per pixel, not just 1. So we need to multiply by 4. And you might ask, why not 3? Why isn't it just RGB? That none skip last means there's no alpha channel, and out of every 4-byte chunk, we're skipping the last one. So RGB skip, RGB skip. Okay, cool. So let's go down to our rectangle. By the way, did you add the view to the view controller?
We did.
We did, and we confirmed that by overriding draw rect. So that seems to be okay.
Yeah, we definitely had drawing before going more complex.
It's possible that either did move to window is failing, or layout subviews is setting the frame. Like a timing thing could be a problem. So we're setting the contents, and then we're going to lay out subviews, which is probably going to blow away the contents. Neat. So let's just set our sure. Are you giving it a frame? Yeah, we're giving it a frame, which should take care of the like the frame is a derived property based on the size, or based on the bounds, the anchor point, and the transform. Yeah, it shows the view, and I don't think we get to see layers in here unless you have reveal on this machine.
Nope. Height in pixels, width in pixels.
Yeah, 2 because it's a retina, non-super retina. So let's, my theory for this is always like, that, yeah, that looks right. That we're drawing in the wrong quadrant, basically. So let's change, when we're adding our ellipse, let's set it to a negative y down at the bottom. Yeah, so let's try negative 100, and then we'll try negative 100, negative 100, and then negative 100, positive 100. And then we find like, oh, it was off the screen. It'll be a real short session if this doesn't work. Well, we can go back to drawing the old way because the drawing logic still makes sense. It's just that this performance trick will not work. Oh, it's also possible that the color's wrong because you're doing integer division, for example. Let's do a simpler set fill color.
But my
Like-
super weird color. I want to know
Yeah,
what
it
it
could
ends
be.
up being.
Well, now let's set the coordinates back because it's always fun when you find something that was definitely wrong, like the ×4 thing, and you fix it and it's still not fixed because you're like, well, how else was I going to have caught that totally other valid bug? Set fill color, add ellipse. I know the problem. We didn't fill. Context.fill. It's not a path. Is it a path? Yeah, I think add ellipse actually does a fill. We wanted context.fill ellipse, maybe? Yeah, that was the problem. We added an ellipse path and then didn't fill it. So you could either fill path or do what you just did, which is, well, yeah, either way. There's a couple ways to do things. You want to see your color.
I want to see my color.
Right. So it's fill ellipse instead of add ellipse.
I'm very curious what this color is. I want it to be gross. It's not there.
Oh, come on. It could still be the color. I think Swift will do the right thing and coerce that to floating point division because the parameters are like doubles or CG floats.
I set the contents, right? Not the context.
That's correct. It's super weird, but it's correct.
All right.
Okay, to eliminate variables, set the contents of the layer, like the views layer. Like we know that's wrong, but if it works, it will tell us something. So layer.contents instead of drawing layer.contents. And let's only, comment that one out. We only want one of those at a time. Let's try filling something simpler. Let's do our original filling code that you have commented out that we know worked. Let's not with all the draw and stuff. Yeah, just the like all the code that pertains to a context. We should be able to reuse that all. And let's set it back to doing our drawing layer. Well, try this and then set it back to drawing layer because drawing layer should totally work.
Well, this is before we did all the flip and scale stuff, so maybe our context is
flip and scale, flip and scale. Sure. See if there's anything I did related to that flip and scale, as you say, stuff. Fill ellipse. Set fill color. Oh, set fill color. Yep, we did that. I'm double checking my code where I set the contents. Possibly am remembering a critical thing that we're forgetting. Yeah. Let me double check one more thing to make sure that I figured out what I was doing wrong. Image callback. Yeah, I'm like disentangling this from a more complex version of this that I wrote that like had a bunch of garbage that we don't need. I am fairly certain that I forgot a critical piece, which is we need to get a CG image out of the context. You don't set the context directly as the layer's contents. You make a CG image from the context. So literally just context.makeImage, which gets a CG image from it. I feel slightly silly.
Hey.
There it is. I should have. I mean, this is code that I worked on a year ago, so I forgot it. And like, it's an any, right? So like the compiler is not helping you at all. Now you'll notice the background is black, just because, you know, most drawing apps would be like white and then you draw. We should, you can find out what your color was.
Mm-hmm. I'm not giving up on the color, man.
Yeah. And that makes CG image basically, it's not like doing anything. Like the, oh, you know what?
It's a pleasant
Hey.
blue.
I think this is where the last piece of documentation is. Yeah. Okay, can you pull up the docs for make image? This is super cool. This is the piece that I was missing for a long time and used to use the old draw rec method, and then somebody turned me on to this, and I was like, oh my God, it works. All right, so check out this amazing little snippet of documentation here. Returns a CG image object that contains a snapshot of the bitmap graphics context or null if the image is not created. The object returned by this function is created by a copy operation. Subsequent changes to the bitmap graphics context do not affect the contents of the returned image. So like you render stuff into the context with all your fills and your ellipses and stuff. Then you grab an image. If you render more stuff into the context, it won't affect that image that you made. It's a lot like a Swift value type in that way. In some cases, the copy operation actually follows copy on write semantics. So the actual physical copy of the bits occur only if the underlying data of the bitmap graphics context is modified. So translated, that means you're getting a free copy. It says it's copying it, but it's not actually moving any bytes anywhere. It's just saying, hey, all those bits that are managed by that graphics context, those now are also an image that you can use in image places. So they say, as a consequence, you may want to use the resulting image and release it before you perform additional drawing into the bitmap graphics context. And that's exactly what we're doing. The end release it is like old school memory management before Arc and Swift and all that. But when we say, grab our context, get an image out, set it as the contents, and then we're done with it, that's what they mean. So once we set that as the layer's contents, the next time the view has a render pass, it will use those bits to render the image, and then we can do more stuff to the context, and it'll just, next time we set that as the layer contents, it updates the layer. This is the fast way to do rendering in a CG context and have it go onto the view. You can run this at 60 frames per second, no problem, and it's real slick because you're not doing any extra copies. So I'm very happy that I learned about this. I don't know if Jerry Wang is on the call, or on the Twitch, but Jerry helped me figure this out a while ago, yeah, it's the cool way to do it until somebody tells me about another cool way. So we've drawn a bleh, and now let's just fill, like when we make our context, let's just fill it with white so we have a nice white canvas. So let's just go up to where we create the context, right up at the, right there. So we do all our scaling and stuff, and then, yeah, let's just do a set context set. We need to set the color, fill color. You'll have to do UI_color.white.cg color.
How would you animate that, Zev?
Animate? What do you mean?
That's a question from chat.
Oh, my chat didn't update. But how would I animate it? Wait, why, for serious, why didn't my chat update? Do I have to refresh?
I don't need to add rect. It just, if I set fill color, it fills it. Context dot
you
fill.
have set the fill color, and then you need to fill a rect. Yep. So CG context drawing doesn't mix super well with animation because you're doing, pixel by pixel on the CPU. You don't get the kind of abstractions where it's like, hey, I've got this circle here and this circle here, and I want to like animate them past each other. You don't really get anything for that. You basically have to like calculate new frames, and every time you need to calculate a frame, you figure out how far to move the circles and you move them. That's kind of what core animation is for. So if you wanted to, let's say what I was just describing, like say the MasterCard logo where you have two circles and you want to kind of have them overlap, you would make two separate circles in two separate layers and then animate the layers. That said, the contents property of a CA layer is animatable. So if you have two images that you wanted to crossfade between, and you set the contents of the layer in a core animation context, it would do like a crossfade. I think you can do other transitions. I forget what exactly is available, but if there's like a flip or whatever transition, I would imagine that it works because it's marked as animatable. But remember that this is just a bucket of pixels. It's not going to give you any fancy shape tweening or anything like that. It's like basically all it can do is a crossfade or whatever other like two-sided flippy kind of things core animation will give you. So like, yeah, you can do it. If you needed to animate this for some reason, and again, I would strongly advise that this is not the right tool for the job, you would do something like, and there are things in iOS that work this way. You would use a CA display link, which gives you a little callback every time the display is about to render. And when your display link fires, you would tell the view, or you would do our little update cycle. You would draw into the context and set it as the contents. I guess I did kind of set myself up for that by saying you can run this at 60 frames per second. What I mean there is more along the lines of what we're going to be building, where you're drawing, and each time you move your finger, it actually would be 120 on an iPad Pro. But that's what I mean by animate. Like if you do need to update this fast, you can do it with this technique. But yeah, if you're doing like what we typically think of as animation, use core animation, use UIKit, use SwiftUI.
Cool. So
cool.
Finger painting.
Finger painting. Yeah, cool. Sorry, I picked up on that late. So for finger painting.
Sorry, real quick. Should I put the this line back up in the layout subviews, or are we good with where it's at?
Yeah, let's move it there, because we're gonna get rid of the other thing. We're gonna get rid of did move to window. That was just a convenient place to run some code.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna move all of this to the touch handling code. All right, cool. Yeah, so kill that. So now we're gonna do a little bit of touch handling, and we're gonna do it super basic. There are plenty of different ways to do the actual drawing logic. The one that I actually ended up building, I found some code online for smoothing like a Bezier path. Like if you have a bunch of points, like as you move your finger, you get points. And what it does is it kind of keeps a rolling average of the last 4 points and kind of smooths it out as you draw. I actually don't think you need that. I think that's probably overkill, although it helps smooth things out if you draw really fast. But for a first pass, certainly, we can just basically, as we move our finger, each time we get an update from the touch sensor, we're going to draw a new line to the next point that we moved our finger to. So it's going to be pretty straightforward. And then we'll talk about ways to improve it if we have time. So old school. Oh, somebody says if you add lines in the context using add lines, you can call context.strokePath to show the line. Like such a function for filling the color of the ellipse. Yeah, so you can add lines, and we are actually going to be adding lines stroking a path. The thing is, if you were doing this using the draw rect method, where you have to redraw the whole thing, what you basically have to do is save up all the drawing information that you have made and redraw it all, or as I said before, save a bitmap, re-render the bitmap, and then draw your one new line over it. And either way, it's going to be slow. If you're saving a bitmap, it's whatever it costs to save, like, you know, X pixels times Y pixels times 4 times 8. Like, it's just a lot of memory. If you're saving the strokes, like each time you draw a line, if you save that in an array and then you play those back, that's cool for things like undo, but you're going to grow big O of n. The more strokes you have, the more time it will take to play them back. So like I've done it where you build it like that, and the more you draw, you just keep your finger down and keep drawing, and it just gets slower and slower. So it certainly works. It is suitable for some applications. I'd like to be able to do just arbitrarily, like keep drawing and not have it grow algorithmically. So, algorithmic complexity type stuff. So that's why I'm not going with that approach here. Okay, so old school touch handling, these days mostly supplanted by gesture recognizers or even higher level stuff like SwiftUI, but it's fairly applicable in this case. So there's 4 methods we're going to override from UI view, and they are touches began, touches moved, touches ended, and touches canceled. Yep, so began, moved, ended.
There.
And then everybody forgets about canceled. Canceled is actually quite important because you could be in the middle of some draw operation and like the phone rings, which used to take over the full screen. I guess it doesn't anymore, but like things could happen that take over the full screen. And you want to know that the user didn't stop. They were forcibly interrupted and maybe they didn't have time to do what they were doing. And then you would like, super there. You can, back out the changes they were making or something like that. Yep, so we go through and call super on all the things. So these are fairly self-explanatory, but they're like, as you touch down, it'll say, hey, if a new touch began, and maybe it was multiple touches, it'll give you a set of those touches. It's an object that it contains information about the touch. And then as your finger moves around the screen, it will update you every time, the touch sensor on the phones updates at 60 hertz, I believe. On the iPads, with the fast screen, it's 120. If you're using the pencil, it's 240. And they give you all this cool, like there's predictive touches and all sorts of fun stuff. We're going to keep it real simple. So let's just think about what we want to do for a second. When we touch down, we're going to want to set a start point. And then every time we move, we're going to draw a line from the old point to the new point and update where our last point was. And then when we get ended or canceled, then we're done. We stop doing that. So let's have a var somewhere, like a property that's like last point. It's going to be an optional CG point. It doesn't have to be optional, but like if it's not, what value do you give it? So might as well make it optional. And when touches began, so there's all this multi-touch stuff we're going to completely ignore. So let's just assume that the first touch in the set is the touch we want. So like if you touch down with multiple fingers, it will just be one of them, whatever, just like, / do not touch with more than one finger. You can figure that out on your own time. So last point is touches.first.location in, and then we're gonna give it our view, self. So location in is used because like there's all this cool coordinate space conversion stuff. Like you could ask for its location in some subview if that's what you wanted. So yeah, so last point is that. And then when touches move, let's draw a line. So let's like let new point equals all that same stuff for the new touch. Maybe do a guard because I think it'll come out optional. So guard that, or if, or whatever. And then draw a line from the last point to new point. So let's see, let's do context. Oh, you know what? Let's go back to line 63 real quick. We need to start our line somewhere. So we need to have our context. The way context drawing works with paths is you go to a point and then you start drawing from that point. So we want to move to point, not add line to point. That's going to add line from wherever there's basically a cursor. So if you move to last point, and I think that's going to be optional, so you'll have to do some annoying stuff there too. So I like to map on it, but you can also just if-let it, or force unwrap, or you just assigned it, so go ahead and force unwrap it. Oh, but
it could be nil from the first.
It could be nil. I mean, you're not going to get touches began if the set was empty, so like really, it's fine, but yeah. So we've said in the touches began section, let's start out at such and such point. Hey, by the way, people on the stream, is the font size okay? I know, an hour in isn't a great time to ask that, but how's the font size? I just realized I'm looking at this fairly big, but if you're watching on like a mobile device or something, it could be small.
I usually monitor on my iPad, and on an iPad Mini, it's legible. On a phone, probably not, but
you can
sorry.
pinch the zoom.
Yeah, it's a bit small.
Bit small. Maybe whack it up a couple points. Okay. So right. So we're gonna. The point has been at. The cursor has been at a point. So we are going to move it to a point. So that has now created a line, but it's just sort of the idea of a line. Now we need to actually stroke it. So we're going to say context. How do we want to do this? Let's add set. What do we want to set? Let me look at the things that I have built in my old code. I have layers of abstraction, so it's a little hard to tease out. Okay, yeah, so we want to set the stroke color. And let's make a property that's like brush color. Or we can change that later. Yeah, so black stroke, and then set the line width. To I don't know, 10. And then set the line cap to round and the line join to round. I actually don't think line join matters in this case because we're literally only doing one line segment at a time. And the line join is like, if you have like a bend in the line, what does that bend look like? But definitely the line cap. We want line cap and line join to both be round. I know but is funny, but and yeah, so line cap, if you imagine the line is like, you've got your start point and your end point, you're drawing a line between them, but what do the ends look like? They can be squared off right to the points, they can draw little squares around the points, or they can be nice curves. And the curves are best because then when we have two lines joining, it's like they have circles that overlap and it just makes it a little smoother. And it doesn't matter what order you do that in, you can move before or after because we haven't drawn anything. It just affects what happens when we actually draw. You might even be able to do it once, but these are cheap operations. Okay, so yes, now we move to the new thing. So we don't move. Move is like pick up your pencil, move it, and put it back down. We don't want to move to, we want to add line to. And then we want to stroke path. And then we want to actually do our context stuff. So layer, drawing layer dot contents equals context dot make image. And then if you would be so kind as to pull that all out into a function or copy and paste it, because we also want to do it in ended and canceled. I think. Do we actually? If you move and you stop and then you lift up, you're going to get one again. It doesn't really matter if we redraw it. So yeah, I would pull that all into a function that takes our CG point. So like draw segment 2. And then, yeah, do that whole, it's really those two lines, the get the new point and call the function in ended and canceled. We could do something different in canceled, like back out the last stroke, but let's not. Okay, let's see if it works. The funny thing is after an hour of debugging, the actual write a drawing app part is like 3 minutes.
Ah!
It little bit worked and then stopped working. Cool. So we have CG context, add line to point, no current point. Oh yeah. After drawing, What happened there?
Is it this does need to be unwrapped?
I don't think so. It's that. No, I mean that would have crashed if it were nil. We have after drawing, it clears the path. So you can add 100 points, and then add when you actually stroke the path. Yeah, see, it's only getting the first one. When you actually call stroke path, it's clearing out the points. So then when we call add line to, it doesn't know where to draw from. So we need to reset the current point to where we just drew from. So draw segment needs one more line in it.
It seems like it's a how straight I can make it.
It's speed, not straightness. It's the time delta between two samples.
Okay, so
or the distance delta.
What am I adding?
So in draw segment, at the point where we stroke the path, line 97, that has cleared out the drawing. So what we want to do is we want to tell the context, and actually let's do this after setting the contents. Oh, is that going to cause problems? Basically, one way or the other, we need to draw our line from a point to a point. And are we not reassigning?
We're not reassigning last point.
That's what we're missing. So we need to do that inside draw segment, and we need to use that. So you know what? Touches began doesn't need to draw anything. It just needs to set the and it does. Yeah, it just sets the last point, and then don't do context move to last point. Let's cut that out and move it into the draw segment function. That's what we are missing. So every time we go to draw, we go put your pencil down at the start point with these color options and stuff, move it to the end point, and then go back and fill in paint where your pencil, I don't know, the metaphor definitely falls apart. That looked like it was slow. Was it slow, or was that just lag?
Very slow.
Cool, maybe my entire thing is invalid. I wonder why it's slow.
The more fast that I go, the more complex I make it, the slower it is. But if it's just like a line, it's pretty quick.
Interesting.
That line was pretty slow.
I don't think, like, based on the code that I have that works on real slow devices, like I ported this back to an iPad 2 recently and it worked great. So I'm wondering if we have any threading stuff we need to worry about, like, main queue. I don't think so, because the updates come in on the main queue and we definitely want to do the drawing on the main queue. I guess that's not strictly true. It looks like the coordinates are all working. Can you draw up under the clock? Does that work? Like if you go up into the clock? Okay, cool. So we don't have to worry about any stretching there.
There's a good question in chat. Is it maybe a simulator thing? Because I know when you're doing like a game in the simulator, it's a lot slower than if it's on a device.
Yeah, that's true. The weird thing is with CG context stuff, it's almost always faster in the simulator because this thing is CPU bound. And until very recently, the simulator was just always faster in terms of pure CPU bounded tasks, because until very recently, Macs were faster than iPhones. That has since changed. But I guess it won't again once everybody has an M1 Mac. But no, I don't think it's the simulator. You can run, go to pull up the little CPU thing, the CPU graph doohickey. It's the Cannabug spray, of course.
Oh, God. Last one.
Because it's debugging. And then if you click on let's see what it's doing. Click on the CPU tab or item. Wow, it's not. CPU is just chilling. I mean, that's, in some sense, that's gratifying.
Well, I think it's the code, because let me rerun to get us a clearer canvas.
There's a question in the chat also. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
Yes. because if I do like a bunch of things, like that was me doing a swirl, and it may just align. So I think there's like a how often we're setting the variable, maybe.
It's entirely possible that like zoomy screen share things are actually interfering with like the display refresh stuff.
Possible.
Can you real quick zip this up and send it to me? I just want to try it on my machine. Like, it's entirely possible that this is just a broadcasting issue.
Sure.
While you're doing that, there's a question in the chat. What's the difference between make image and UI graphics get image from current image context? That's a great question. So UI graphics get image from current image context. Like, there's a lot packed into that method name. The from current image context is like, go and get the current image context globally. There's like one per thread or something, like that's vaguely how it works. And then you like it renders out an image, and when it renders out an image, it's for real rendering an image. It's like, you know, pixel by pixel, moving that stuff into a UI image that you can use. I don't think that's doing any kind of fancy copy and write stuff. It may have changed. What is it? UI graphics get, typing is slow on my computer right now, which is great. Current calling is direct view versus valid context onto the, oh, sorry, not get current, UI graphics image from current image context. Now I'm looking at the right thing. You should call this function only when a bitmap based graphics context is the current graphics context. Maybe call it from any thread of your app. So they don't say anything about copy on write like they said about make image. So I'm inferring from that they're literally going to take the context and write all its bits into a UI image, and that image is suitable for framing, as they say. Contrast that with make image, where you've got a bag of bytes that either you managed because you made, you mallocked up some memory and passed it in, or you did the usually sensible thing and just passed nil. But you have that memory, and it just is going to take the bits that are in there and mark them as, hey, that's an image. Whoever I hand off the CG image to, like under the hood, it's just pointing back at those bytes. So if you are handing it off to something that can deal with that, like in this example, I'm going to throw in some GPU mumbo jumbo that I don't understand. It's going to flush it to the graphics buffer, right? It's taking all those bytes and rendering them on the screen. And once those bytes are transformed into little glowing LEDs on your screen, they're, it doesn't matter what the values of the bytes are in memory anymore. Is that true? What's the relationship between a byte in memory and the color of an LED? I don't know. I've not gotten that deep down. But anyway, that's the basic gist is UI graphics get image from current image context, actually renders an actual image. There's lots of copying of bytes involved. And make image is going to do copy on write things, which means that if you use it in the sort of approved Apple ways, like we're doing here, then it is not going to incur any extra copies. But you won't be able to do things like, send it up to a web server, because that's going to have to then transform it into data and like do stuff with it. But if you're sending it to the screen, it's like this one approved use case where they're going to do some magic. And I'm guessing the shared memory architecture of iOS devices and M1 Macs is really going to help you there, because it doesn't have to move those bytes to the GPU. They're already in GPU available memory because it's all the same memory. Like I think that's one of the cases where you're going to see a benefit. Oh, you're pushing this up, sweet. I was just going to say, Slack it to me, but just let me go pull it down and see if it works on my end. Cool. That.
That was like the perfect amount of time for vamping, by the way. And if you are watching this, let me vamp for Zev while he's checking to see performance on his end. If you're watching this and you missed something or you came late, I upload all of our meetups to YouTube, ! Links in chat. You can get the link to our YouTube channel. And I usually try my best to do it 3 weeks after an event, because that's when the VOD comes off of Twitch. I am a little bit delinquent with the last 2 meetups. I've got it all rendered and ready to go. I just need to do the Git stuff that I just did. So if you'll forgive me that, those videos should be up in the next couple of days. I'll stop being lazy about it. And then this video will be up in about 2 to 3 weeks. And all of our YouTube videos, I include the GitHub URL.
Got it.
Sweet.
I know it's wrong. And having run it, so the thing I was missing that I couldn't see over the screen share because the frame rate's not high enough, but I saw clear as day when I ran it locally, is that it's not just that it's slow, it's doing a crossfade. Remember how we said this property is animated? I love how the callbacks are built in, but yeah. So when we set the contents, and we need to wrap this every time we set the contents, which I guess is just the one time, right? It's just line 99. We need to wrap that in CA transaction.perform without, wait, I wrote that function. We need to wrap that in CA transaction.begin, transaction, not transition, yep, .begin, and then CA transaction.set disable actions true before the set contents, and then after the set contents, CA transaction.commit. I just wrapped this in a function that I can throw in chat, which is just like, okay, if you're going to end up doing this a lot, you deserve nice things. Throw it in an extension that lets you wrap it in a closure. So there's that closure. Oh wow, it renders really.
Yeah, I would not suggest that.
Does this support backticks? No, almost
nope.
Definitely not. Okay. Exercise the reader to translate what I just posted in chat. But anyway, yeah, that should fix it. So
I mean, I can just
super annoying thing
real quick.
This has bit me and everybody who's ever worked with core animation, and technically the contents of a layer is part of core animation. If a property is marked as animatable, are you going to use the extension?
Why not?
Nice. Sure. You'll have to import Quartz Core or UIKit. If you and separate those things onto lines. It's 4 things. Yeah, what am I saying? If you set any property on a CA layer that's marked as animatable, not only is it animatable, it will be animated. It will do a 1 second, I think, is the default transition. Maybe it's shorter than that, maybe a 1/4 second or something. It will do an animation. It's never, ever what you want. I've never wanted the default animation. So that's why you want this little utility. And it messes me up. I'm sure I spent a half hour debugging it when I first wrote this code. And I'm like, okay, I'll fix it. I'll wrap it up in this thing. But because I'm reading this code out of a bigger project and like trying to pull out, the pieces that are important, because I have like, brush color stuff and timers and all sorts of garbage. I missed that line, and it's real important. Yeah, so this little disable actions thing is a hack that, not really a hack, like it's the right way to do it, but I think we might have an issue with where the first drawing is, or the first line doesn't work or something. Does it feel better? It's hard to tell again over screen share.
No, it's the same.
No!
It like quickly catches up though.
Let me,
like when I stop, it jumps to where my cursor is.
Yeah. Let me make sure that that's actually right, and then like maybe there's a main queue issue, because I think I'm pulling it. Oh no, it's just all in the main queue for me. So let me set the contents. CA transaction. Thrilling stuff.
I mean, I'm super pumped about this because I knew none of this. I've always wondered how people just do drawing stuff. So
yeah,
lagginess aside, like I personally have learned a lot, and I'm jazzed about it. But I do want to see what butt looks like.
I have one more idea. which is to pull the image making out of the disable transaction stuff.
Ew.
It feels better to me when I do that. So yeah, just like all you need to change is just what do we? So like on line 98 before the stuff, do let image equals context.make image. And then image there. I think that felt better for me. Give that a try. Like it feels pretty smooth for me now.
No, see, like it's doing this weird thing where I went from, I don't know how, let me try and recreate it. Like it's not getting the touches in order I want to say. It's like I do that and then I do. So that last one that I just did, I'm starting a point and doing like a swirl, but I'm doing it fast enough that it just draws a line from point to point.
Yeah. So let me send you, I just recorded a short video of what it looks like on my machine. I don't want to like mess with trying to do screen sharing here. So let me just send you this.
Mm-hmm.
So I just sent that in Discord. If you pull that up, that's a video of it performing at good frame rates on my machine. So I don't know. I'm going to chalk this up to the stream.
Yeah, it's probably a combination of I'm streaming up and streaming to you.
So if you recommit that and people pull it down, I think that'd be good.
Cool.
I forget when we're stopping. We could add like smoothing or something.
Oh, we have a half an hour, my friend.
Oh, wow. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and commit that so people can check it out, and then we can talk about other fun stuff we can do with it potentially. And do I mean, I will open it up to the group. Path smoothing is one thing. So like it's fairly rudimentary, but if you look at that video, the segments are limited by how close together the 60 hertz samples are, and you think 60 is pretty fast, but you actually get pretty chunky lines. So we can do some smoothing.
You said it's to not use crossfade, right? I want to make sure that I'm having this commit right.
Yeah. Cool. We can do colors. So like, you know, brush parameters, right? We could have like a slider for brush thickness and a picker for different colors, which could be fun. Could even use the new iOS 14 color picker. I haven't played with that at all. So yeah, what I don't know what else. Oh, we could do like a clear all button. That's fun. So yeah, let me know what people are interested. Somebody wants copy and paste. Copy and paste would be fun. So what would you would have to you could do it with the share sheet. If we wanted to add like an iOS share button, we can totally do that, and that has a copy. If you want to do copy and paste like in Photoshop, you're going to have to build a selection system. So like define a region you want to select, and then capture the pixels inside the bounded region. And then a lot of the interactivity stuff, like some of the complexities in a drawing app, like we've drawn these lines and now they're just pixels. If you wanted to paste and like move the thing around, you need to have it exist on a separate layer and move that layer around. And then when you get it where you want it, you like commit it into the thing. You start to get up into this pretty complex like graphic stack. Not to say we couldn't do it, but I don't think we could do it in
30 minutes.
26 minutes.
Yeah.
36 minutes. How does
let's do a clear button, and if that goes quick, let's add a color picker.
Cool. Let's do it. So let's hop into IB and throw in a button. The version of this that I'm copying from is like a spoof of Calvin and Hobbes. So it's like Spaceman Spiff.
Yeah.
Defragulate button or something, but like clear would be fine too.
Mm-hmm.
Or use an asset, SF symbol for like a broom or an eraser or something would be fine.
Yep, wrong button. This
one. And just pin it to a corner or something.
I don't. Broom.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You can try clear.
Clear is just gonna be like an
Yeah.
X.
Yeah, maybe there's a bomb. Boom, fire.
I'm just gonna use the word clear.
Yeah. Okay. When I search for clear, I get a whole bunch of like an X in a box. Is that what you did? You find that?
Are
'Cause we can do
you
that, but-
on? Yeah, I'm still on Catalina. I'm not on Bezier yet because
I'm on
streaming
Catalina.
reasons. Weird.
Yeah, I'm in Catalina.
Weird.
I have a clear button here that was added in iOS 13. It's just the word clear. The word is certainly fine. And mine, it's a little Space Name's Bit Blaster, but can't have everything. Okay, so wire that up to some kind of action. Did you pin it to the right? I don't know what the warning is.
It's probably about localization.
That's an outlet.
Sure is. Yeah, it's a fixed constraint about
Yeah.
localization.
I'll just delete the fixed width. That's fine. You
It
don't
was
need
too
a-
small.
Oh,
Always changing up the visual things, and I always look for other things. Clear, tapped.
and then we're gonna just pass right through. Oh, the view controller will want a way to access. Oh, it's just its view, but it needs to know that its view is a drawing view, a painting view. You can just cast it. Painting. Painting. And then let's call a pretend method called clear drawing that we're then going to go and implement. Yeah, every time. Cool. And this one's actually going to be fairly easy. We're going to just copy the clearing code from the top when we first created the context.
All of the context?
No, just lines 29 and 30, which is just setting a fill color and filling. Plus, we need to set, we should pull out line 99 through 102 as, you know, update image or update contents, because we'll need to do that in a few places. Anywhere we do any operation that updates the drawing, we need to, as a final step, we need to actually commit the drawing. And we'll probably use that in a few places. And like a lot of this code is fairly, like, it could use some cleanup just because this was a first pass. So if you're actually doing something like this, you want to be a little more organized, have some models so that you're not just, you know, doing kind of procedural code all over the place. Have some constants for stroke width and stuff, but just the gist. And that's also fine, right? Like that's how you write stuff, is you write it messy, then you figure out what pieces are going to be shared. That's the question mark, question mark, question mark before profit, and then you just never get around to adding profit.
Yeah.
Okay, that should work now, unless we mess something up. I've definitely seen screen share type things, like my computer will lock itself to 30 frames per second when it's screen sharing on Slack.
It could be what it is. The clear button disappears though as soon as I start drawing.
Yeah, you know why? Because there's a layer in front of it. Wait, yeah, we're adding our layer or something, and our layer is popping to the front. So we want to make sure the clear button is not a child. Oh. So in a real app, you would want our drawing view to be a subview of the view controller. And we can do this actually. We can do this really easily. We can't do it that easily. That's annoying. Okay, when you go to add the layer, wherever that is, send it to the back. Add sublayer. Search for layer. Was it in the, yeah, self.layer.add sublayer? I forget if there's an add sublayer at index or if you're going to just send it to the back. It'll be self.layer dot send sublayer to back or send sublayer to index or try add sublayer, insert sublayer at. And so that's going to be drawing layer at 0 and then get rid of the other thing. But oh, it doesn't make sense that the drawing, okay, that worked. Yay. Cool. So we have a clear button. We can commit that. Oh, cool. Java Mobile Dev is going to try on device. I'm interested to hear what you find. Since I don't know if my chat is updating, it may have already happened.
Nope, that was just typed in.
Okay. Cool. What do you want to do next? Brush size, color?
Colors.
Cool. Do you want to try the new iOS 14 color picker?
Might as well.
Cool. I don't know how to use it. Let's find out. We can rack up some Google points. Probably want a button. And I think you're on iOS 14 targeting, right? So
yep.
We can do, oh, they don't actually have a good color. I mean, you can do like an eyedropper asset. Or just do the word colors. Or you could have,
just going to use the word.
I guess the fancy version of this would be a rectangle that's the color of the color. And then like, you know, when you pick it, it changes. But that's just a bunch of boring glue code that would be like 2 seconds to write in Swift UI and like 20 boring minutes to write in UI.
Yeah, I dig where your head's at, but I was going to say color.
Yeah. Yep. Even just like, I have to wire up an action like in Swift UI. If you lived in Swift UI, you'd be home already. And I'd love to see a version of this using the same drawing techniques, because I asked some folks, and I don't think Swift UI helps us out too much in terms of the actual drawing. Like you can draw Bezier paths for sure, but I don't know that they would be this fast. Okay, let's find out how to present a color picker. I don't even know what it's called. It might be UI color picker. I have no idea.
UI color picker view controller.
Great. It looks like it takes a currently selected color. So let's add a property to our painting view.
To the painting view or to the?
Well, I mean, this is, you know, garbage, quick and dirty code. So I just figured let's store all the state in the view.
Okay.
Just so we don't have it in two places, right? Like storing state in the view is bad, but storing state in two places is arguably worse. So yeah, let's just do like var, selected color, current color, painting color. color, nice. I ended up with a brush model in my thing once I added a couple different things. And let's default it to black. Or
yeah, black's fine.
You know, text if you wanted like to support dark mode. A side note, as an exercise for the reader, go play with the drawing and sketching tools in the Notes app and look at what happens when you change to dark mode. Like, just think about, assuming that they're building it something like this, and I don't know if they are, if they're doing, I think they're doing vector stuff, so it's a little fancier, but like, Matt, I actually wouldn't do this because the background color is not gonna change, and like, then you have to update your context. Like there's some stuff you got to think about. Let's just do black for now, because the background color is not going to change if you go into dark mode, and that's a whole extra thing to think about.
Word.
Okay, so yeah, set the picker, and then picker dot, I think there's selected color. Can you add a convenience accessor to this view controller or an outlet to the view that's of the right type so that we can just get to the view as a painting view? I didn't mean for the picker, but it's fine to do the picker as well.
I wasn't listening, what?
Okay, can you add an outlet to this class to the view that's of the right type, like painting view, so that we can get to it as a painting view without having to cast it every time?
Mm-hmm.
It's always fun when you have two outlets to the same value, just so you can change the type. And then you can also fix drawing view, view as painting view on line 22. You can get rid of all of that and just say painting view.clear drawing. That's a nice bus. Love deleting code.
The code does run smoothly on a device, so it is a simulator thing.
Sweet. All right. Yeah, simulator, or like, yeah, it's weird how much a screen share can take over your whole machine. It's like it locks down the frame rate. It's really annoying. Okay, great. Yeah, so let's, I guess, present, and then maybe we need to be a delegate, or there's a callback. I don't know. I don't even know if we need to stick it in a nav control. I've never used it, so we'll see if it happens. Yeah, could read the docs.
There's got to be a delegate because we need to be able to get the color out.
It's super modern, so maybe it's a closure instead of a delegate protocol.
Well, let's go back to this thing. Delegate equals self.
Hey.
Adorable.
I know. She's been so good. She's just sitting here eating my hand. Did select color, did finish. So I guess did finish is like if you dismiss, but did select color is probably not available. Okay, great. I guess you have to pull out the selected color. They don't give it to you. Rude. You should update the content pixel size when translating from portrait to landscape. Oh man, just so many things when rotating from portrait to landscape. So I have an app I built that uses some of this technique. It's not drawing by hand, it uses the device rotation to draw, but it's kind of the same ideas. And I just posted it in the chat. It does handle device rotation, but it does it by having the, it makes the context square just based on like, I think I just hard code a number. And then when I rotate the device, counter rotate the drawing view so that it effectively doesn't move relative to the device. And like, you're always gonna have to make that call when you're making a drawing app. What do you do when you rotate? Like sometimes you'll keep the content and rotate the device. Sometimes you'll sort of rotate everything and let the user rotate. Like if you're using Procreate on the iPad, you're responsible for rotating the canvas. But like, it gets really fiddly if you tie your drawing context to the view, because the view could change at any time, and you almost want to, like, for a real drawing app, like the user could want to zoom in and out and stuff, so you kind of want to decouple the context size from the view, and then you can sort of arbitrarily pinch and zoom and stuff. Yeah.
Damn.
All right.
So
one last step.
What
we need to use the.
What I did for everyone that is listening instead of watching, which is totally cool. I added the delegate function for the color picker selection. I set our brush color from the selected color from the view controller, which I probably want to debug and make sure that's the color that I expect. And then I dismissed the color picker. And then I also went back into our painting view and I added a property observer on brush color so that when we set the color, we set our context fill color.
Oh, that's interesting. That's not, I don't think that's what you want to do.
It did not work.
Right. You're using stroke, not fill. And I think you just want to, you're setting the context stroke when you draw anyway. So I don't think you need a property observer on this. I think you just need to use the brush color in places where you currently use black or whatever. Yeah, there it is.
That's smart. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Hey.
And now change the color and paint something else.
Hey.
Cool. So it's only affecting new strokes. Hey, sweet. Color picker. That color picker's nice.
Yeah, we got that weird laggy stuff again. It's definitely way worse. So it must have a lot going on. But yeah. 15 minutes left. What would you
you know, it'd be fun that we can't really easily do on the simulator, but we can kind of make a sketch at it and then sort of use it. People have to try it out on device, but you could add a brush size slider that works as you draw.
Ooh.
Yeah, we'd have to build it and then just sort of, actually, depending on how the multi-touch thing in the simulator works, we could give it a try. It would be like jank to the max, but could be kind of fun. It basically, you don't have to do anything extra other than making sure you allow multi-touch. Yeah, just like it would update a brush size. You would use that brush size when you do your stroke width, and that would be it. The other thing we could do is try to do smoothing.
Let's do smoothing.
Okay. Let me send you a giant function.
Ooh. My favorite.
So I have a, sources cited. Actually, it's going to be a whole file. I have a link to where I got this, and I turned it into Swift. I don't know how it works. I mean, you can kind of read it. It's just there's a little bit of math that I don't know why this works, and you have to understand things about how Bezier paths work to understand this. But it's a whole file. You can just add the file.
Yeah.
So this function takes in 4 points along a path and returns a little smooth path segment. So it's going to replace the thing that we're drawing. What does it do? It takes the last 4 and then it's like only between the last 2 or something. I don't remember. But it should be relatively easy to wire in. The only thing we're going to have to change is we'll just need to keep track of some points rather than just 1 point. That's the only thing. Let me see how I'm doing that. Okay.
Boy, it's math.
Yeah, it's just CG point stuff. And you see at the top, it asserts that we have 4 points. So we basically just stop calling this until we have 4. So that's pretty easy. So so what we're going to do is we're going to have a little array, and we're going to, every time we get a new point, instead of just drawing it, we're going to push a new point into the array, pop the last one out, and then feed it into this function, and it will give us the next segment to draw, and it should be smoother. And Matt, can you real quick, can you run the app and just do a little drawing, like with some fast circly lines, and just save off a screenshot so we can compare before and after, just so you can see what the jaggies look like. Can you move any faster? I think it's the lag is making it.
If I move too fast, it becomes just a line.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can kind of get a feel for it. Yeah, like right at the end when it zips to the end, you see those like, hopefully those will go away. If you can, yeah, save that off, and we'll compare at the end. So let's change last point into an array of CG point. Yeah, last points, nice, non-optional. And let's see, I started it out with CG point 0, count of 4, but then I must be checking if it's .0 at some point. Where am I doing that? As points. Oh, I also did a bunch of like annoying stuff. I think if you try drawing in the app right now and you just click without dragging, it won't do anything, because we're drawing lines from start to end, and if you draw a start and end at the same point, nothing happens. So my version also has a bunch of stuff for like detecting if you didn't move very far and it draws a circle instead, but we don't have to do that right now. I'm just trying to figure out where I actually like, oh, does the function handle it? Does the smooth function do something about the point being 0? Oh, it protects against a division by 0. I don't remember if that's, actually that shouldn't be the same thing. I don't know. We'll see if this works.
Yeah, it's doing something with length to check that it's not 0.
Yeah, but like, because it starts with 4 points in it that are all the point 0, 0, it's going to be like you always start a joke at the upper left corner. Let's try it, and if it does that and is sad, then we will do something else. We'll fix it. Okay, yeah, so let's add, so default it to, when you set last point, set it equal to a default value of array repeating, or you can do .0 4 times, but there's a cute initializer for it. It's an array initializer. Array repeating yeah, repeating .0 count 4. So we're going to repeat the CG point .0 ZERO 4 times. So it's an array of 4 points 0, 0. Okay, and then you could, write some little fun array utilities to make it behave like a FIFO queue or something, but we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way. So each time you were setting last point, instead we're going to like array append last point and array drop first, basically. It'll be optional, so you want to deselect or guard it. And then drop first. Is that mutating? Subsequence. You might just need to reassign it, like silly Swift things. I forget if there's yeah, does that mutate? If you do that, then it definitely won't give you the right thing. That's not a mutating function, so it's not doing what we want. We just want last points equals last points dot drop first.
It's mutating according to the documentation here.
No, it's not. It returns a subsequence.
Oh, yeah. So what do you want me to do instead?
Last points equals last points dot drop first. And you'll have to wrap it in an array because it's a subsequence. So all this is saying is push all the points down the line. And then I think in ended and canceled, we want to set it back to the default value array repeating 0 count 4. So just grab that initial value. And set it in ended and canceled. We don't need to do it in clear. It will have already been done because we won't be touching the screen. So touches ended, touches canceled. We're just resetting our point stuff.
Instead of drawing the segment, or after we draw the segment.
I think we actually probably didn't actually need to draw the segment in ended and canceled, but yeah, that's fine. It's not hurting any. Okay, and then to update our drawing code, so you're gonna set all your stroke colors and stuff. Instead of doing your move to, you're gonna do let path equals. So do all the stroke colors, and then let's after all the strokes and things, and get rid of add line as well. So then on line, in between lines 102 and 103. So we're going to set all our color properties, but before we actually stroke the path, we're going to do let path equals cg path dot smooth path segment. And pass in our points. Then context dot add path. Then we're stroking, and then you don't instead of what you have on 109, we just want to do nothing, I think. Yeah, because we don't need to do anything. Did we push in the new point in all the right places? Oh, are you moving it into this function?
So
we want to do this.
We begin and I add it, and then
right.
everywhere else we've moved, so it would need to be here as well.
We want to, yeah, but we want it at the beginning. Actually, let's move. Draw segment is just going to change into a function that doesn't take any parameters, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so get rid of the 2-point parameter of draw segment. I mean, this is a little messy because it's like making things into globals, but just to get it done. Yeah, so get rid of that. And you're gonna do your code to push the points down the array in moved and began. Same. You don't need to rename that. It's just new point, append, pop, draw segment. Append, draw. Okay. Yeah, you don't even need that last point there, I guess. This is the kind of thing where you really want to do a little bit of debugging and stuff. Yes. So there's your upper left problem, right? Because it's always starting from the upper left.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out, based on my old code, how did it
should we
how did it
should we do the array repeating at the point of begin touches?
Well, There's a few different ways we could do it. We could, so I started a point, I set it to, oh, yes, what you just said is what we should do. Exactly, you start it with 4 points at that point. Last points equals an array at the point where you started. That's exactly right. Yeah, try that.
Hey.
Oh, sweet. So like, it's not going to be perfect. It's a pretty rudimentary smoothing algorithm. We also maybe broke something. Oh no, that was just the.
That's the me drawing too fast thing.
Yep. Maybe bring up that image, see how it compares. It will definitely be hard to tell because of the lag. So people may want to just check this out once you commit it and compare them. But it should appear smoother. And this is the same technique I believe I use in that repo that I posted with the gyroscope drawing. I mean, you can look at these runes and draw your own conclusions.
How dare you? This is my art.
On the, I think I can speak forward and backward in time after seeing these. You can see it on the upper left. There's a little C-shaped thing on the left image that looks pretty jaggy. And on the image on the right, you, for the most part, you don't have those. So that's...
It's far less jaggedy. There's still some... Oh, definitely this one was nice and smooth. I think the lack of smoothness in the simulator is probably the same computer resource thing that I've been struggling with.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So great, that worked. Neat. And so why don't you commit that? And that's probably a good place to, and I'll just mention a couple other directions people might want to take this in. If you want an eraser, just pick white. So you could have a button, like in my app, I made a little toggle between pencil and eraser. But yeah, it's just a large white brush. So that's pretty easy. If you want undo, you're on your own. I don't have a great way to do that other than like saving off images at certain checkpoints. Like it can get messy. I didn't really need undo in the things I was building, so I didn't build it. But
well, you could.
I don't know of an easy way.
You could consider. You would have to make an array at the point of touch's end of a new set of lines, so that you could then pop off.
You would, well, but you'd have to redraw your drawing from scratch because you can't pop pixels off the drawing.
Ew. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you start thinking, okay, maybe I save, like, you ever wonder why Photoshop has a set limited number of undos? Because you have to save every state going back in time.
Yep.
Or have a set number, or do clever coalescing things, or you do save every drawing as data and replay the drawing from the beginning, and maybe that's fast enough for what you're doing. Or you sort of maintain like a partially replayed drawing, like, you know, you can make it as complicated as you want to. So that's a fun exercise. What else? I've always been curious about, like, let's say you're adding, you know, pencil pressure support. How would you make these lines variable width as you change the pressure as you draw? And the problem with the way we do it right now is that each line segment, even if they're short, the line segment is still basically a tube that's a constant width. So that is somewhat limiting, and I think you'd have to do some pretty nifty figuring out of Bezier path stuff. There is a website that I can link you to that has amazing resources on Bezier paths. I'll see if we can find it.
While you're looking that up, thank you so much, MaxiPlux, Alter Carbon, Jam Mobile Dev, and VDay13 for the follows during the stream. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I think this is it. It's this super cool website with little interactive like widgets where you can play with these paths. If you just want to pull this up super quick, like, you know, now that you have a basic framework for drawing Bezier paths fast, what those paths are is up to you. So if you just scroll through to some of the interactive graphics on this thing, this is like everything you want to know, from the basics to, like, you know, all the things. So if you just pause on one of those graphics, any one of them, maybe not that one with like control handles.
It says control handles.
No, go to a new one. Go to a next one. To keep going, there's ones with like clickable, draggable things. There. Yeah, you can drag those around and like see the numbers change, and it tells you like from scratch how to do this. And from here, I think by the time you get to the bottom, you're talking about like, okay, how would you take a line, expand out a margin from it, change the width of that over the course of the spline, like all the things that you could potentially want to use to make a for real drawing app with pressure control and all this stuff. So if you want to, like, it's, you know, it's some math, but you can crank it out, and he has all the formulas. So as long as you can convert the formulas into code, and like each of these little graphics has a view source button, right? So you can just click view source and see at least the JavaScript that's being used to generate these. So, you know, if you're motivated to do this, oh, that's so little code. It looks like he's got some libraries though. Bezier.default cubic. Okay, but like it's all there, and it looks like it's made to be read, which is cool. So if you're so inclined, you could use this to do some cool stuff. And then the performance is the other side of it, like a real proper drawing app. You're probably not going to do it like we just did. You're probably going to do it using OpenGL or Metal or something. But for little drawing needs, for, you know, a signature pad, for any kind of little sketching, you can totally do it the way we just did it. And then when you call that make image, you can just turn that into a UI image and send it on its way.
Cool. So good list of fun little things that people can do after stream. But it is 9 o'clock. I'm exhausted from shoveling snow and being woken up super early by a puppy. So I want to thank everyone for watching. I had a super load of fun learning about this. So thank you, Zev, for teaching me and for teaching all of us. Yeah, I was a little bit nervous when it wasn't at first. But yeah, if you enjoyed this stream, we do these Learn Swift Boston events on the third Thursday of every month. We always start a new year with a beginner night. So January, we'll be doing a beginner night. We'll cover some basics. You know, we covered some more heady topics here. We didn't really talk about too deep about what like a CG point is and all that. Like those are the sort of things that we go a little bit deeper into on a beginner's night of like, here's what a string is, here's why you would use a string over such and such, and you know, like we bring it back to basics. We usually build a small app to sort of have the conversation around that all. So if you just want to have a little reminder of some of the basics, or you look at the stuff here today and you're like, wow, all of this is just way over my head, beginner's night is definitely for you. I also stream on this channel Saturdays and Sundays. Of course, it being the holiday season, my schedule is going to be a little bit strange for the next couple of weeks. But I have been building a server using Vapor. And if you've never seen one of those, it is some cool stuff that also is like, what? So I'm currently trying to map a whole bunch of objects into a single object, and it is getting strange. So come watch me stare at this and go, a lot. But yeah, again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your great questions. Thank you, Zev, for leading this session, and we'll see you in the next one.